Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my Blacadian universe. I wanted to talk today about something that people often say when discussing, racism and injustice. So, when we bring up something that seemingly seems frivolous, especially here in Canada, the little racist, I think some people call it like racism light. And it's different. Racism in Canada is different. It's a little bit more covert. People try to deny it and also compare it to the overt, in your face racism that is, taking place or has taken place, well, currently, but also in the past to America. So oftentimes people will say, oh, you can look at all of our politicians across Canada saying, at least we're not, the United States. And we always do that comparison. And, whenever someone brings up instances of these, I'm using air quotes here, but this different type of racism that doesn't seem as, obvious, people will then respond with, it's not that deep. Oh, Denise, you're looking into this. It's not that deep. That's not what it means. That's not what the intention was. And there's nothing more frustrating as a person who is experiencing oppression, discrimination, and exclusion to have someone who literally has had systems built for them tell you that you don't know what you're experiencing and that your lived experience is invalid. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that it is, in fact, that deep. So let's talk about it. So, as a sociologist, one of the things that I do is I talk about, this collective think that we have when we're part of a society that's, some of the rules. How do we know the rules as a society? Obviously, some of them are governed into law. I'll get back to that in a minute. And some are the social rules, like how close you stand to somebody in a line that you're waiting, you're waiting in a checkout line. I've literally written papers on it. How close is too close, that personal space piece. Um, you know, there's these rules. So, we have these collective ideas. So, like being skinny is considered good and being overweight is bad. Or, being young is good and being old is considered bad. We all, would know these things to be true. But how do we know these things? Are these things that people tell us? Like, no one has sat you down, I imagine, for a majority of us and said, being young is good and being old is bad, or, being skinny is good and being overweight is bad. Like, people rarely have those direct conversations about these, things that are part of Western society know that we are told. How are we told this? We're told this very subtly. There's constant messaging in our storytelling and our advertising, in the content that we consume in many ways that shape those ideas. We see people being successful and happy when they are thin, when they are young. We rarely, see these things applied outside of that sphere. And so it sends us the message constantly, just that those things are beneficial. These things are prized. These are the things that we should aspire to. And everything that falls outside of this box is bad. This also applies to racism. Just as you can say that all of these things that I've just said applies, we know what ageism is, the same things apply to racism. So our society has been shaped by white supremacy. And what that in turn means is that you, myself included, are all receiving messages subtly that says being white is good and anything that falls outside of that sphere is bad. So, being Black is bad. And I say this, and I am very fortunate because I talk about this all the time. If you listen to the podcast, if this is your first time listening, welcome. And but I often say that my parents made a very deliberate effort to make sure that I knew that Black and being Black in my Black culture was a positive thing. And so I can't even tell you how the fact that I could make this observation is entirely because of their teaching and my upbringing, because a lot of people do not make those connections. And, probably one of the reasons why I'm a sociologist, but that is, the point. The point is that we subtly absorb these messaging, and here in Canada, we also are told and taught all the time that Canada is different from America. We have the Underground Railroad. We were the saviors of Black people. That doesn't touch us. So people give themselves an excuse to not really observe what is happening here. So, as I said, my upbringing was all about critical thinking. And one of the things that I think we lack, especially in these current times, is the ability to think for ourselves, to not absorb the messages that are being thrown at us about the state of the world, what is good and what is bad. They are getting, for lack of a better word, they are propaganda. They are becoming more and more concerned or focused in dividing people. And what is happening is that people are not questioning the messages that they're receiving. They are passively just consuming content and not messaging without critically thinking, is this true? Where did this information come from? Who would benefit from telling me this information? And, let me do some hard facts data research. Is this true for my lived experience? Should I, in interacting with, immigrants, have I felt unsafe? Or, was I hurt by them in any way? Like using those kinds of skills, looking up, who's more likely to, I'm just trying to think, to commit violent crime. Is it somebody that is mentally ill? Is it someone who's impoverished? Is that really dividing lines around race? These are the kinds of things that I don't think people dive deeply into, because I think they would be surprised by the results. I will tell you, here in this country, in Canada, I know just from looking into the research, we have a disproportionately high number of Black and Indigenous people incarcerated in our jails. But the crimes that they are committing are the crimes that are not typically associated with, it's basically, it's a disproportionate number based on how they are represented across our country. And the crimes that they're committing are also crimes that happen when people are, lower on socioeconomically, that are, more impoverished. And so when you look at those kinds of things, you're sort of like, what systems of oppression are in place to sort of do that? When you say that your jails are filled with, a percentage of people that represent 2% of your country, what is happening? That, to me, someone would say, oh, that just says that, all of these people are incredibly racist or sorry, incredibly violent. Whereas I see those statistics and I say something is amiss, because I think, just based on ratio and statistics, we should be seeing a higher white population based on just the numbers that we have in this country. But the fact that it's disproportionate is because they are getting arrested simply because of their skin color. They are less likely, there's lots of studies, less likely to get, oh, we'll give you a pass this time, as opposed to a white criminal. So anyways, just a tangent. It's about thinking about that critically, just digging a little bit deeper and sort of seeing that story being told through the lens of white supremacy. And that is what is critical to having that critical thinking skill. So, this is important. And this is why people want to take that away. When we talk about books being banned, why do you think that is? Books are powerful in the sense that they can shape the way you think. Oftentimes these books are, based on fact and research and data, and they can really open people's eyes to something that's contrary to the messaging that we are being bombarded with. When you read a story that has a protagonist in it that's like, above the age of 40, and then you're like, wow, this person has an amazing life, or you read about ageism, and you read about this discrimination and you say, oh, that is typically unfair, maybe it will shape your thoughts and you say, oh, maybe being older isn't bad. These are the kinds of things that are powerful and meaningful. And this is why we need critical thinking skills. So when I say, there's a hilarious video that I posted on my Instagram feed as well, where this guy was talking about everything just, being associated with being black or dark was bad. So he was like, like angel food cake is white and the devil's food cake is, is chocolate. And, it's hilarious, but it is that deep. It is that deep because it's reinforcing that messaging through the lens of white supremacy, that whiteness is the ideal and everything outside of that is bad. And it would seem ridiculous, but if you don't think of it, if you don't see it, if you don't think about it, then you are telling yourself that it is true. If you can look at that chocolate cake and say, somewhere someone decided that they could never name a chocolate cake an angel, because to them that would seem crazy, because angels have to be light and white, then you understand that it is that deep. The fact that no one could look at a beautiful black woman and describe her as ethereal, because angels are supposed to be, white, pink cheeked babies, then that that's steeped in white supremacy, in racism. It is that deep. So when you look around our world, in our Western society, and you see how things are labeled and named and categorized, you will quickly see that it is entirely based on this ideal that whiteness is there's that hierarchy of whiteness being at the top, and everything falls outside of that. Everything else is othered. And when you, as a person of color, as a black person, when you live in that world and you've been taught to see that, it is literally mind-blowing. And so what is powerful is taking people where the world is designed for them, for white people, and bringing them outside of that bubble. I call it a bubble often, of living in this world where they want to believe that all things are equal. And when you bring them into the knowledge that things as simple as the naming of a crayon as skin color when it's peach color is in fact racist, powerful shifts happen. And what we are living in right now, this time that we are living in right now, is that people do not want you to have those thoughts. They do not want you to see that it is not normal. And excluding people from the norm, from human rights and decency and dignity, is a dangerous thing to do. It is not normal. It is wrong. And once you start thinking about that and you can critically see that and realize that the messaging that we believe and receive all day has powerful impacts on how we live our life, how we write our rules, how we feel safe in our homes, who we see as deserving of respect and love and inclusion, basically human treatment, is all shaped by the little things. It really, truly is. So I encourage you, I will end on saying, I encourage you to think critically, question everything. And especially if someone tells you it's not that deep, chances are it's making them feel uncomfortable because it has significant meaning and probably racist. As always, thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And yes, think critically. I'll talk to you next time.